Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we talk about all the crazy, stupid stuff that happens in marketing and how to not do that, but instead to do smart, meaningful stuff that makes all the difference to you, your business, really all the things that you're trying to achieve in life. All right. Sorry, I had a weird pop-up window happened while the countdown came up, and Dr. Karen and I are doing all of the tech stuff to make this episode happen. But it's happening. And Dr. Karen, you can hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
We can hear Dr. Karen, so we can all hear each other. And this is one of the most important things, probably. I'm sure communication and listening, being able to hear each other, has much to do with transformational leadership. And we're going to get into that while we get into the conversation. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody that if you gave us 7 minutes of your time and had patience with our kickoff for today while we dealt with our tech difficulties, we would love to know that you're here. So please let us know in the chat if you are joining us live. And this, while it might look like a conversation for two people, is in fact a conversation for all of us. So if you are joining us live, please get in the conversation. Share your thoughts, your questions, your queries, your insights, your perspectives in the chat. We would love, love, love to hear your voice as part of the conversation today. With that, we are going deep with our topic for today because there's a lot of things that a lot of people say about leadership. There's a lot of things that a lot of people have experienced in leadership, either from a leader's perspective or from a recipient of leadership or maybe lack of leadership perspective. And so regardless, all of us have some form of experience that we have had with leadership, and some things that we would, if we're lucky, maybe we have an experience with something that we would consider transformational leadership. And I think for a lot of us, we haven't maybe been exposed to that yet. So as part of our conversation today, well, of course, this is a marketing show and we're going to be talking about marketing. At the end of the day, leadership is kind of leadership. And I would love for marketers and CMOs, whether that's fractional CMOs, VPs of marketing, however you might define the leadership roles in your organization from a marketing perspective, I would love for marketers to be able to forage the path. Forage the path, I feel like that's talk about eating, foraging along a. We would like to trailblaze in this arena because there's a lot of things, and actually more and more things that are falling on marketers' shoulders in terms of both internal and external communications. So we're going to talk about, well, we're going to see where the conversation takes us today, because there's by no means are we covering everything in 45 minutes. But we are going to do our best. And specifically, again, if you are joining us in the conversation, you have questions or you have a specific direction that you would like to go today. We have Craig joining us. Hi, Craig. We have Shannon waving. Hi, Shannon. Always great to see you. You get to help us drive if there's a specific direction you would like to go. So feel free to pop your comments and again, insights into the chat. So before we go into the depths where we're going to go today, let's learn a little bit more about the wonderful Dr. Karen, who is joining me, who is really all about transformational leadership. So Dr. Karen, can you give us a quick intro to yourself and why or what led you to find yourself in this arena of transformational leadership?
Thank you so much, Tracy. Yes, I am actually the president and CEO of Trans Leadership Incorporated, which stands for Leadership Transformations. And what's important to me is coming alongside corporate business leaders who are in large global organizations where there's a lot of complexity and difficulty. And sometimes I also come alongside the CEOs of large entrepreneurial businesses as well. And transformational means that you are doing something that's really going to shift the atmosphere in a very different way. You are really going to make a change that makes a difference for that business, how the business shows up, both internally with their internal customers, the people who are the team members, and also with their external customers. And I got into this because I'm a psychologist by background and training. And years ago, when I was in the Army, we not only did traditional psychology work with individuals, we also worked with leaders and addressed leadership issues. And it was there that I said, leadership can make a huge difference in the experience that people have in an organization and whether that experience is positive and productive or not. And so I got really interested in that and later on decided to test it out to see what psychology principles could do in a business environment.
Mm. Well, and I mean, I feel like we talk about this a lot on the show is these like underlying humanness, right? So when we're thinking about leadership, and while we might batch like kind of military leadership separately from corporate leadership, really the foundations of that is not very different. And more importantly, the foundations of how humans receive leadership is actually, let's start the conversation here. Is that something that's kind of global? Like individuals kind of like receive leadership the same way, or is that very unique by scenario, by business type, by business culture? Um, what are your thoughts?
Well, let me talk first about not so much the receiving, but maybe the sending of leadership, because there's a
Start with
lot of
sending.
commonality there on the sending side. So, what people really need, in a sense, and what leaders need to send, if you will, is a shared and compelling vision. They have to be able to set goals that people know, where are we going? Where are we heading? What are we all about? Who are we as an organization? How do we choose to show up in the world? And what are we principally doing to add value to other people? People need to hear that. They also need to be inspired by whatever that mission and vision is and that purpose. So there's some people who are going to fit in your organization because they can share what it is that you're doing, your purpose and where you're going. Other people won't fit because they don't care about that. They don't want to do that. And that's going to be abundantly obvious. And so you want to be clear about selecting, attracting, and retaining the right ones and having your culture so strong that when someone is not the right fit, you know it, they start to know it, and then you can quickly help them to move to a better place, someplace where they're a better fit than where you are. So I think it's all of that sending out part. Then you are building, developing, and growing people. You're providing opportunities for them to step up into some new ways. And that's exciting for the right person in your organization to be able to contribute their gifts, their talents at the highest levels. So that's what people are looking for. Now, how people receive leadership is a function of a lot of things. It's a
Mhm.
function of how the leadership is set, from the leader, and it's also a function of who that person is. We all have our own different personalities, our own different proclivities and ways of operating, and some people are going to be naturally more, I would say, agreeable. Others are going to challenge a lot. And you need some of both in your
Mhm.
organization. You need people who are going to say, well, I'm not so sure about that. And other people who say, here's a way we can move forward with what we've decided to do. So you don't want to just shut them down because they're challenging. You might need to hear the challenge. And so I think that feedback mechanisms within an organization are important. The willingness of leadership to co create with the team members and to listen to them is also important. So, a lot of variables on sending and receiving.
As always, right? Like I always think about this as radio waves, right? And we have our rate. I mean, at this point in the filming of this, we still have radio, and you still can tune your radio, and we all choose the different stations that we want to tune our radio to. And it's not necessarily like quote unquote the right or the wrong radio station, but if you like a specific type of music, a specific genre, specific time frame, you tune your radio to a specific frequency and not to other frequencies. And I want to come back to this concept. Okay, there's a couple concepts that you brought up that I want to come up to. So let's start with the shared of this, because I think a lot of times, just based on the historic, whether that's the definition of leadership or just kind of the way leadership has manifested unintentionally to date, there's a lot of belief that leaders create the vision and the strategy, and it's not so much a like team co-creation is the phrase that you used. And so when we're talking about making a shift, how important is it to have that shared value? And also, like, if you have never created it before, how do we go about starting to create that?
Okay, so let me start with the first question you asked about how important it is to really have the shared vision and maybe the collaboration and co creation process. Remember, there's an idea that you have and you want to implement that idea. And in order to do that and to get the work done, you need the people on board. And if you think about the basic psychology of people and how people are wired, they are much more committed, motivated, and interested in those ideas that they also have an opportunity to shape and to co create. So you're going to get more from your people if you involve them in the shaping. So you can start, let's say you are the CEO or leader, you can start with an idea because clearly you have a vision for why you started this organization and what you think it's about. And then when you share it internally, you invite them to take it to a next level and to make it even better than what you thought of. And you know, Tracy, that I really do believe in what I call the third solution, which is what neither one of us thought about on our own. So the CEO is one brain, is not going to think of everything. The people in the organization without the perspective of that senior leadership, that executive team may not think of everything. When you put those two together, you're going to come up with some options, some perspectives, and some ideas that are much more powerful than if you had been on one side alone or on the other side alone. So that's why it's important to have the shared part, the co-creation.
Okay, so I love this. It's actually reminding me of an exercise I did when I was in business school, and we did this. It was a brainstorming, teaching people how to brainstorm. And so we had these like quiet time for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, 7 minutes or something, where we all had post-it notes and we wrote all of our ideas on the post-it notes. And then we had these big boards and we put the post-it notes up on the board. And then we had to go through the exercise of categorizing the post-it notes. And what we experienced in that is that, one, there's different people who categorize things different ways, which we may not have seen in the first place. And then as a team, we picked a category and then we iterated on that again, right? So, okay, like now that's what we were thinking. Now we've seen other people's ideas. What other ideas can we come up with? And we did it as a like conversational, then like exploratory activity. And I love how you framed it as a like leveling up, because I mean, yes, sure. If you're especially if you're a CEO, right? Like I would hope that you have some kind of vision or direction for the company. That's not always the case, but like most people at least have a glimmer of that. And when we open the door to the idea that our team, based on what they know, based on their commitment to the organization, to the customers, those types of things, have the opportunity to level up the idea. I mean, from a leader's perspective, that is something just like feels very exciting for me, right? Like one brain can only do one set of thinking, right? I have my ideas, I have my experience. I'm like super happy to use that as a jump off point, but I've never seen it be effective for that to be the destination. Because there is, I mean, the phrase that's coming to me is like the next levels in your people, right? And what happens when we can turn on our team to take us to the next level instead of assuming that me as my solo leader have to be fully responsible for taking us to the next level. That feels like a lot of pressure from a leadership perspective when we might have team members who want to go on the journey with us.
Oh, yes. And you want them to go on the journey with you because as they grow, as they develop, as they think together creatively with you, they're also increasing their abilities, which means they're going to contribute more to the organization. Now, if you just like think about children at home, if you do everything for your child for their whole 18 years in your house, that's a crippled child that's coming out of that home. Now, if you start early, you're teaching them how to make the bed, you're showing them, you're demonstrating, you're doing it together, you're letting them do it, and you're giving them feedback, about what's right with the picture and what else they could shift and do differently, that child is going to develop some expertise. The same is true in an organization. If they don't participate, they miss growth opportunities. Your
Mhm.
company is then stunted, even though you have these tremendous people with lots of strengths and lots of gifts. You're not using them, and so they may choose not to keep bringing them to work, or they might even atrophy. In any case, you won't have access to all of that gold that you have in the organization.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, takeaway for all of those who are listening, participation equals growth opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
Because I think from a leadership perspective, we want to have the strongest teams. I mean, I think maybe there's some unique scenarios where a mindset of an individual leader and some, maybe there's some issues someone might have with being challenged or what have you. There's no 100% here. But I think most leaders would like a strong team, right? I would like a strong team. And also, I would like my team to continue to grow. I don't want to assume that their potential is captured on their hiring date, right? That there is more. And if they're not participating, or I would say probably they're participating in something, but what are they participating in? Is it the type of thing that's leading them to growth opportunities, or is it the type of thing that's leading them to frustration that's going to get them to leave your organization? They're participating in something. What are they participating in? And are we being intentional and cognizant of what they're participating in as a function of what we're trying to do here together?
Well, and there's something important in what you were saying earlier. You mentioned that most leaders probably do want this, and those who have experience being in these kinds of environments and settings, they know the value of it. And so they do want it, and they do want to cultivate it.
Mhm.
Sometimes there are leaders who haven't experienced it, and they are in a mindset that defines leadership as I tell you what to do, which of course that's
Right.
not really the whole definition of leadership, because you're really inspiring people to come to the table and you're leading together in many ways. And so what I find is sometimes in some organizations, some of the work I do is to really develop executive teams. And one of the reasons that the executive team needs to be developed is the CEO cannot just lead alone. The organization is
Mm.
too big, there are too many tasks involved, and you need a group of people who share that vision and who are able to translate it to multiple levels in the organization, cascade it here and there, be where you're not, so that it continues to happen and grow for your company across all spheres. And those people on the executive team have to come to what I call an enterprise focused mindset about leadership, not just their silo, not just their little stovepipe, but to think about what's best for the organization as a whole and also those you serve. And so the CEO will find that his or her job is much easier when you have developed your team to think and participate at a high level, and it's going to extend your reach. You're going to get there faster and better.
Well, and I mean, if anything so far that we've talked about is relevant for marketing, like this is it, right? Like this, our whole gig here is to expand reach and expand impact. And I think a lot of times from a marketing perspective, we do forget that. We get caught up in creating social posts or digital ads or blog posts or trade show booth designs, and not that we don't have to do those things, but if we can remember why we're doing those things. How are we enabling our marketing teams to live that way of being? Because I believe from a marketing perspective in the opportunity of co-creation with the clients. And so if we are all participating as a community here together doing amazing things, like you are partnering with me to help you solve your problem, but it's not just me, right? It's us. We are doing something together. And we, by nature, or at least in my brain, is related to co-creation. And Shannon is sharing in the comments here about how she hearts co-creation, but many teams are not set up to co-create. And like as marketers, we want to look at this as like a little microcosm right now, in terms of if we want to be able to go out and create community, co-create solutions with our customers, if we can't do that internally with our 2, 3, 5, 20 person marketing team, how are we supposed to do that with 2, 5, 20 clients? We don't have the skill, and it's a practice, right? Is that, I mean, that's what I'm feeling anyway, Dr. Karen, is that this is a practice, and going out and talking to customers is the game, but we need like to practice the skill somewhere within the organization. Otherwise, like our exposure to it, our participation in it is not going to create growth opportunities.
Let me add another piece in there, because Shannon is right that some teams are not really set up to do co-creation. And that speaks to kind of a cultural value that needs to be in place. So individually, you may have the ability to co-create. However, your environment may not reinforce that. It may not reward the co-creation. So for example, you could have an environment that's so focused on a dog eat dog kind of mentality, or so much competition that it doesn't leave room for the collaboration. And maybe all of the financial incentives are all about who is the best, individually. It's not about rewarding teamwork. It's not about rewarding collaboration. It's not about rewarding what we do collectively and how we succeed together. So if you're not rewarding that and you're rewarding the opposite, you're going to get the opposite. So it is true that the system itself has to be set up to facilitate the co-creation process. And then when that's in place and people are clear, oh, that's how we win around here, that's how we get rewarded, that's how we get acknowledged, is that we collaborate, we work together, and we come up with something spectacular, they'll start to do it. But if you don't reward it, you don't acknowledge it, that's not what people are going to do. They do what gets rewarded.
Well, and I think, I mean, we've done episodes on KPIs on this show, and we will continue to do it on KPIs because most of them are whack, especially when it comes to marketing. But okay, I'm as you're saying that, what I'm experiencing is a relationship between sales and marketing, which there is still a lot. I mean, there's still a lot of people who will say very confidently that you can never have the same person leading sales and marketing because whatever reasons they have come up with. I never pay attention past that point because I don't agree with that. But the thing that is interesting to me about that is that it's both of our jobs to create clients, right? So
Yes.
would it not make sense for us to co-create them together? There's so much like when you look at just KPIs, right? Look at marketing KPIs, and now that we have Chat GPT and people just being like, what are the types of things I should measure, and just taking whatever the machine tells you to do, and tracking those things. If you ask about sales KPIs, you ask about marketing KPIs, it will give you different things. And so now we're like tracking completely different things that are not connected to each other. So now I'm over here as a salesperson getting rewarded on the number of calls that I make, regardless of whether or not that accomplishes anything. I got marketers over here getting measured on how many blog posts they wrote this month, regardless of whether or not anybody read the blog posts. Never mind finance, just anybody, right? And we wonder why we're not generating business results. Like, you guys, come on. Like, these are not the types of rewards that are founded in collaboration and founded in co-creation. And so if we were going to look at, okay, we've got sales and marketing as functions that are both supposed to be contributing to the creation of clients, why don't we explore what's happening on the co-creation level? Oh, nothing is happening on the co-creation level. Oh, probably because one, we've never even talked about the co-creation level before. So that's a good place to start. Two, we're not consistently reiterating that, right, in our narrative, but we're also not rewarding that. So how could we? And then I mean, I'm a big believer that there's not necessarily like one way to do that that's going to work for all organizations, but like based on who you are, based on your industry, based on the time you've been in business, based on the current team you have, like what is a way that you could reward co-creation? And if we had that mechanism operating like between sales and marketing, now we have people who are coming to work on a day-to-day to practice the skills of co-creation. They're like in the energy of co-creation, which means now when they're going out into the world to create content or conversations or any of those things, their beingness is in the land of co-creation. This, I mean, again, this feels like something that makes lots of sense. But there's also like lots of reasons why that ends up not manifesting in a business environment. So, Dr. Karen, I would love to explore some. So, people who are listening to this conversation and they're like, yes, this makes so much sense. But I've never been able to achieve that in my workplace. What are some of the things that you see that that people run up against that stop these types of movements, transformations from existing in a business?
Yes, and let me first comment on this whole notion of sales and marketing together. A lot of times, if you're looking at smaller companies and smaller organizations, you do have the same person or small group of people who are responsible both for marketing and sales. And that works very effectively when the sales and marketing people are dialed into what the rest of the leadership team, the CEO's vision, for example, but the rest of the executive team, what they have said they want to accomplish. And then that small group of marketing salespeople can create their campaigns and whatever they're going to do to accomplish those objectives. So that happens a lot in small companies. In the bigger companies, these functions are typically separated, as you've been indicating. Marketing is in one stovepipe and sales is in another stovepipe. And there may be good reasons for that to be the case. However, if the stovepipes never communicate, then you're going to have a dysfunctional organization. So I think that what's important is sales and marketing, they have to have, I'd say, an overarching objective goal and vision that connects the two of them. So if I'm in marketing and I've got my objectives and it's this way, you're in sales and you've got yours, and we don't ever connect about that, we're probably not going to be as successful as an organization. And in comparison to those teams coming together and aligning with where are we going as an entity, as an organization, how do we bring our marketing skills? How do we bring our sales skills to make it happen? When you don't do that, sometimes you get scenarios where the sales team will be upset with the marketing people because maybe the marketing people are moving too slowly for what they're doing, or maybe they're moving too fast for what they're doing. And this is all happening because they're not talking to each
Yep.
other and they're not agreeing on the same goals and objectives. And sometimes that also means coming up with success factors that are different than
Mhm.
what you might traditionally measure for sales and marketing, because these success factors, they, if when they're co-owned and co-created, can be more creative and broader, because the point is not the number of calls, the point is not the number of blog posts, it's what's happening with bringing in those clients and those customers and what's going to move that needle. And sometimes when you collaborate together, you discover it's not what's traditionally measured in either stovepipe.
Oh, I think that's so important. And it's really interesting because I started my career in retail furniture. And by nature, sales and marketing are very separate functions, right? Marketing is a lot about branding, wide, got flyer drops and radio ads. I mean, when I started, we still did newspaper ads, right? Like it was about awareness. And then the salespeople live in the store, right? They're only dealing with the people who come in the store. They're not dealing with anything else. But the critical alignment component was this is the experience we're selling from a marketing perspective. That's the experience you got to create in the store because the marketers are not in the store. And one of the things I thought was like very effective about that, even though like again, our day-to-day activities were really like there's a hard break, right? Like we don't overlap between activities. But we all know the role that we are playing here. And you guys got to match what we create in the market. Otherwise, we are not going to sell furniture. And I think, again, at the end of the day, I love how you reframe kind of the KPIs as success factors. Like, what are our success factors? And again, from my perspective, like, I can't sell an experience that you guys can't deliver on, right? So the best thing for me to do is sell the experience that exists in the store to people who want to buy that experience, right? That it's different to sell an experience from a marketing perspective of we're the cheapest all the time to this is made locally by handcrafted artisans. Okay. If you come in, it's not going to be the cheapest thing that you can buy, but you will know that it is something that was made by your neighbor. Okay, there's different people who resonate with each of those messages. And I got to be telling the right story in order for the right people to come into the store to buy the thing. And then you need to be, okay, well, maybe we're the cheapest and you get a bunch of pressure sales, but you don't care because you chose this was going to be the cheapest, right? Versus like, this is a white glove service. I'm going to get you the like one right piece that's right for your space, right? Like these are the things where the success factors come into play that are higher, the umbrella level, and not just the KPIs. And before we go back to like some of the things that stop us from transforming this arena, Craig has a really great comment here about I'm going to replace your shoulds, Craig, with coulds just because I don't believe in using that word. But the CMO could be asking the marketing team, what KPIs could we use? Marketers at the sharp end know why and when certain KPIs are not working. C-suite can be up in their ivory towers, in denial of what really works. And I think this also speaks to, again, like that open line of communication. And they have to be willing to listen to. I'm going to give this example. And for those of you who watch this show, you've heard me use this example before. But I worked for an organization and I was responsible for marketing, but VP of sales left and I was in the interim taking care of sales as well. And this sales, we had a sales gentleman who was not, he was hitting his KPI of all the calls he needed to make in a week and never moving anybody through the funnel. And so I had a conversation with him. He's an experienced salesperson, been a salesperson for like 20 years. And like that was longer than I had been in my whole career at that point. And so I don't pretend to know more than you about sales, but I can see that there's something about this that's not working, right? So like let's talk about it. Like, what's happening here? And he was straight up just like, I wouldn't do any of this. Like these activities that we have to do on a day-to-day basis, I'm doing them because it's required and I don't want to get fired. But like, that's not how I would sell. And so I said to him, I'm like, well, what would you do? He started telling me his plan. And I was like, okay, so how about this? Because one is like not scheduling any meetings, right? You can't get worse than zero. We're already at zero. Let's try something different. And I was like, why don't you do what you would do for a week? And we'll see you deadline. I don't have to approve it, right? You do what you would do for a week, and we'll see what. And so the call requirement at that time was like 125 calls a week was how many calls they were supposed to be making. He made 8 and booked 3 meetings. And I was like, oh, that's a good ratio. And maybe 8, yeah, maybe we could work on a little more than 8, but like that, I want 3 meetings, right? I want 3 meetings because meetings turns into business. Cold calls doesn't turn into business, right? So it was like, I think a lot of times we have these handcuffs in there because we read a book and the book said this makes sense. This is how many calls someone should be making. I don't like the word should. In a week, and we turned it into a KPI, but it's not working for you. Like I got people doing things here still, right? What is working for them? What is not working for them? And if we are really all aligned, if we've done this co-creation activity to the point where like we're all aligned on like selling stuff, right? Like I'm pretty sure that if we all sell stuff, then we get bonuses and we get to go on trips to Mexico and you get to get your family whatever you want in terms of your lifestyle from a sales commission point of view. And like we all want that, right? I'm pretty sure we all want that. So like how can we create that? And it might look different than a different team.
Well, and I will say this. I mean, the word that you've been using, which I think is huge, is alignment.
Mm.
And you really cannot have alignment without conversations on an ongoing basis and without evaluating what is and isn't working and testing some things and making shifts as necessary. Now, if you're a business that's been around for a long time, you know what works because let's say you have an objective to get, like you said, 3 meetings a week or whatever it is, you know what it takes to get that. And you can train your new people in, yeah, do this and you're going to get the 3 meetings, blah, blah, blah. Now, sometimes market conditions change and what used to work is no longer working. And when that happens, you still have to stop. You still have to have a conversation, evaluate, is it that the salesperson isn't doing this well? They don't have the skill or is it that we need to be doing something else? You see what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So, but you can't decide that in a vacuum. And
Right.
sometimes sales and marketing don't work well together because they're too separate and marketing is doing what they do. And then the salesperson, I can't sell this because you're marketing what's not even possible in the store. Let's say we don't
Right.
even do this. And so therefore we can't sell something that's not a reality because the customer's not fooled. They see that we're not really offering what you're marketing, or again, it could even be reversed, in a sales direction. But the point is, they have to share. And if sales is having a problem with something that marketing is putting out, they have to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And if marketing is putting out stuff at a speed that sales can't keep up with, then that has to be talked about. So, I mean, there's just so many components that if you're operating in silos that don't communicate, it's a recipe for disaster and non success. You could do a lot better if you communicate, if you decide some things together, if you share what is and what isn't working.
Well, but then, Dr. Karen, we would have to admit that something that we're doing isn't working.
And there's nothing wrong with that. See, again, now this is so interesting. A lot of times companies that are really focused on innovation are not afraid of mistakes because they
Right.
know that when you make a mistake, you're learning something from that mistake. They're not afraid of experiments that don't work because, like Thomas Edison said, That's one way it doesn't work to light up the light bulb. So you rule that out and you can go on to something else. So that learning is key, and it's really critical. If you have the mindset that if something doesn't work, it means that you are fatally flawed personally,
Mm,
or somehow that you are wrong, or that you're never going to get it. No, things work and they stop working. And then you've got to shift and change. You've got to be agile. You've got to be flexible and move with that. Or sometimes it's a smaller tweak. It's not that the whole thing goes out, but if you study, it's that, ooh, in this market, if we shift the dial just a little bit, that's going to work better than what we have been doing. So you got to take ego out of it. And at the end of
mm.
the day, say, we want collective success here. And what does it take to get to that?
Yeah. Okay. Just because I'm cognizant of our time for today, I want to focus on, because you right at the beginning of the conversation, you started off with shift, right? This concept of shift. We are talking about transformational leadership. How important is it to like create the space for that to like continually be iterated? Because I feel like when we are talking about transformation, especially in the like way a lot of people have used the phrase digital transformation, people assume to some degree there is a destination point. I think like from the human growth perspective, this is more of a like consistent evolution. So when we're looking at these, if someone's sitting and saying like, okay, I feel like I'm called towards this shift, um, what do they need to keep in mind in terms of this destination versus constant evolution?
I would say this: living things grow and they change. And therefore, you are always going to be shifting something at some point because that environment changes. So, I live in Colorado, and in some seasons it's snowing. It's actually snowing outside right now, even though it's in May. But
I
and
mean,
the
I was gonna, that's like the typical Canadian weather.
That's typical Colorado weather as well. And the point being that when it's snowing, you're going to do different things than when it's hot outside and sunny and dry. And so you have to constantly be monitoring the environment for the shifts and changes, and you have to shift and change, or you'll find yourself walking outside in the snow in shorts, bare legs, a sleeveless top,
Flip
no
flops.
hat, yeah, and flip flops, and you're going to get sick or worse, or you slip on the ice and break something. And so the point is, nothing stays the same.
Mm.
And that's okay. Just be willing to flex with it as it changes. That's the whole point.
Yeah. And I love what Vanessa is sharing here in the comments about the world changes and it's important for businesses and people to pivot and embrace new strategies to succeed. And I think this one, Canadian, so I love a good weather conversation. But also, this is just a really good example because I think a lot of times people go into the workspace and they think they don't know how to pivot, they don't know how to transform. They go and they do their accounting process every day and it's the same. But we forget as humans, we carry these personal skills of adapting to the weather. That's an adaptation. That's a pivot, right? Like there's multiple days where I go out and we open the garage door to go to school and it's raining. And I'm like, oh, better get my rain jacket. Right. And you pivot, and we actually do have experience as individual humans in making that pivot. And so, if one, we can lean into that belief that we can do that. Maybe we haven't done it in this scenario before, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. We have a transferable skill that can help us over here. And if we are doing that under this umbrella of alignment of like, okay, great. So for the last leading up to COVID, everything was working tickety boo for us on our trade show strategy. And then COVID, and we can't go to trade shows. Okay, that sucked. Yep, that sucks because that was working really well. We can't do that now. So, how are we going to continue to deliver on our success goals and our success alignment? How do we get creative? How might we profile what was working? How might we mirror that in the digital space? How might we? How can we? How might we? Are like two of my favorite questions, because one, it is based on the we, not how can I go and fix. I can't fix anything. I can't even fix my shoelace, right? Like, how can we do this? And because we've built that investment in the we over the years, people they want to contribute their ideas. Also, they probably had ideas that they've been sitting on because they're like, well, that's working, so I don't need to like blow up something that is working, which is not something I would recommend. If you have something that's working, that's awesome. If you don't have something that's working, now's the time to allow that imagination and creativity and innovation into the room. And dare I say, maybe a salesperson. Craig had shared earlier about how marketing team members can go on sales training. I would say sales training, like salespeople know what your marketers are doing, right? Have coffee with them. What do they love? What is that connection? How are they there to help you? Because even in these moments, as humans, if we can get aligned and say like, oh, okay, well, but I know the people in the marketing team. I know they really want to help me, but what they're doing right now is not helping me. Then I am much more likely to share my ideas about what I think could be helpful to me. And then they can run with that and say, like, oh, this would be more helpful to sales. What if we incorporated it this way into the marketing program? Test, iterate, change, grow, fail, learn, all the rest of the evolutionary process. But the point is that, I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, this is about choosing each other, right? About like choosing to belong together on a journey for an organization. And from a leadership perspective, there is an opportunity to set that direction, right? You are the captain of the ship, but like I'm going to choose a spaceship because this is how I would choose, right? Like, we are going to Mars and we are going to figure out how to go to Mars. And people are like, yes, I figure out how to go to Mars. I'm a marketer, but I would like to figure out how to go to Mars. Cool. Come on over. And like, open up those lines of communication, get in the conversation. There's so much power in the we. And I think, what I'm taking away is like, how can we harness the we to make the transformations that we want to make?
Yes, and we have to make the we an acceptable objective and goal, a desirable goal. And I think sometimes when two teams are coming together, like say sales and marketing, like what we're talking about, we don't even have to lead with, here's a better idea. Let's say I'm a salesperson.
Right.
I'm saying here's a better idea. What I might say to marketing is this. Here's what we're experiencing in sales when this marketing campaign rolls out. Here's what happens on the ground level where we are. Here's what we're wanting to do, meaning where we want to go. These are the goals we want to have. Now let's talk about what we could create or do differently that leads to those goals and objectives, so that you can bring an idea. It's even better to listen, to say, here's what we're experiencing, and to let that person, oh, we didn't know that that was your experience, because here was our objective. The reason we did this was for so and so and so and so. Then you identify what's our shared objective between us as the two departments. You'll find that, okay, how can we get there better? And you're going to find it. You're going to discover it. And that the world around us is constantly changing. So don't expect yourself alone to be able to do all the shifting, come up with all the ideas. It is a collective ride. And since I'm in Colorado, I'm going to say you're on the river, the white water rapids, in the raft. And everybody on that raft has a role, has a position. They're doing something that ensures that that raft is going to get safely down the river. And so you don't want to, cut out your team members who are
Yeah.
crucial.
It's so funny because I remember now I'm thinking of the time I went whitewater rafting. And before we did that, we had to learn how to pull another person back into the boat. Right. So like because we did like class 4 rapids or whatever. So there's a likelihood that you could fall out of the boat, and everybody in the boat needed to be able to pull someone else who had fallen out back into the boat. And I mean, when I think about a work team, maybe it's a little bit like less dramatic, right? But like, I want to be able to pull you back in the boat, right? Like, I don't want you to just be like falling off and we're like, that's fine. Just keep paddling. I'm gonna just do my job over here. Who cares about how many like other members of our boat have fallen out? Pretty soon you're gonna be the only person left in the boat. And
Which
then
is very
like
dangerous.
very dangerous and terrifying. But let's not do that. Let's empower our teams to keep us all in the boat, even when, let's say, especially when we are riding the class 4 rides.
Absolutely. And I want to add another part. Sometimes when you're whitewater rafting, you'll come to a place where there's like a calm eddy where you can pull over to the side, and maybe before you is a class 4 rapid, and you pull over to get a little breather, maybe you drink some water, get a little snack, but the main thing you're doing is talking about how are we going to take this next leg of the journey. And in business it's very similar, because oh, maybe that's a rapid that's different from the ones we've just come through. And here are some of the characteristics of it. How are we going to succeed going into this arena? And you're each looking at different aspects of it, and then you come up with a plan. Now, this may not take an inordinate amount of time to do, but you take the time to do it, and then you continue rafting together successfully because you took that time to analyze the conditions and decide what you're going to do about it.
And I think like I think about this from like an athletics perspective too, right? And the difference between performance and practicing, because in those class 4 rapids, I have to use the skills I have. I can't build new skills in the class 4 rapids. I have to use the skills that I have. But in those calm eddies in between, I can build new skills. I can identify, okay, well, maybe like this is what we just did in these class 4 rapids. Did that? How did that feel? Were we good with that? Or do we think maybe that side of the boat needs to, I don't know, whatever. But we have the opportunity in those calm times to build those skills, to create the space, to empower ourselves better for the next set of class 4 rapids, which will not be exactly the same as the last set of class 4 rapids. Even if they're in the same class, there's different water, different landscape, different rocks, different I mean, I'm in Canada in the Rockies, right? Like we got bears. So like you don't know. I might not be ready for those things, but I definitely won't be ready for those things if I didn't like learn from the last set and like use that to influence how I prepare for the next set.
And I just want to remind people, and I said this, some people say, oh, well, we don't have time to do so and so because the rapids are so fast. That pause that you take does not have to be long, and it can make a huge difference between success and failure. So remember to use even the short little pauses that exist.
Well, and I think, again, I love a good analogy. I love this whitewater rafting analogy because if anybody's ever been whitewater rafting, they're going to get it. Like sometimes that calm water is just 20 meters, right? It might not be very long, but one, you got to notice it, right? And then two, you have to take advantage of it, right? So even if it's not going to be long, you have to notice like, oh, hey, okay, things are kind of tickety boo. This is great. Let's let that tick, right? And while we're letting it tick, how are we preparing for when it's not tickety boo? And does that mean we take 100% of our focus and do that? No, it doesn't. But it does mean that we allow both of those things to exist. And we also are intentional about noticing when we have those opportunities to slow down and use our time wisely.
Yes.
Oh, Dr. Karen, I just enjoy every conversation I have with you. We could probably talk for way longer, but we have reached the end of our time for today. So, Dr. Karen, if anyone is watching this show and they're interested in learning more about transformational leadership or how you might be able to help their organizations, where is the best place for them to find you?
Lots of places. You can find me on LinkedIn, for example. You can find me on my website, which is transleadership.com. You can also write to me, Dr. Dr. Period, Karen at transleadership.com. All of those ways are ways to find me. I'm especially responsive to email. So a little bit old school. So if you really want to find me, use email.
I'm still like, I have people who will like text me or LinkedIn message me, and I'm like, if you need me to get something done, I need you to send me an email because that I'm going to flag in my inbox and not let it go until I get it done. Everybody has their own ways to do stuff. So I would highly recommend all my friends connecting with Dr. Karen. Again, I have never had a not powerful conversation with her. So I would highly champion any time that you could spend in conversation. And also, we had Vanessa and Craig and Shannon all in the comments. Connect with each other if you're not already connected. This is, I mean, quite honestly, I think we went deep today, but I also feel like we skimmed the surface of transformational leadership. So if this is something that you are experiencing in your marketing department or your organization as a whole, don't let this be the last conversation you participate in on that front. Let it be the first of many conversations. Connect with me, connect with Dr. Karen, connect with the other participants in the chat, stay in the conversation, because as we talked about today, it's the ongoing effort to shift and transform in the ways that are going to empower you and your organization. And with that, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you next time. And until then, permission to do you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Tracy.